What is happening, y'all? Cowboy here, and welcome back to another how-to guide for Wilds. And today we're going to be talking about the longsword, the most popular weapon in Monster Hunter. Now, on top of being a giant katana, this thing actually pumps out insane amounts of damage. And while it is an easy weapon to pick up, I think it's a little bit more difficult to master because it is highly based around counterplay and being able to time various counterattacks against the monster. But either way, let's jump into it. So with triangles, we're going to have overhead, overhead, and then crescent slash. You're really not going to be doing those all that much. With circle, we have the poke into the rising slash. Those are much quicker to chain. But you're not going to be worried about all those too much. There is some use for the poke into a different move, which we'll get into in a little bit. More importantly, I want to talk about fade slash. Now, the reason fade slash is so important is not only is it an excellent redirection tool, being able to move you around the monster as you do it, but it's also going to build up a lot of gauge. Now, similar to the other weapons, we have a gauge mechanic. The idea here is we have that little gauge below sharpness, and as we do attacks, that gauge fills up. We would then do what's known as a spirit blade combo, pressing R2 to expend that gauge, doing a series of attacks, and as long as the final hit of it, the spirit round slash connects, the gauge will go up a level. So right now the gauge is up at level 1. When we get it up to level 3, the gauge turns red, and then the weapon and its damage potential really begin to open up, which we'll talk about a little bit later. Now there's some other ways to help get the gauge up. To start, instead of doing the full spirit combo, after a fade slash, you can jump straight into Spirit Blade 3 and then your Spirit Round Slash, which is much faster as you saw. On top of that, we can also build our gauge via counters. So if you were to attack the monster and then hit right trigger and circle, you'll do what's known as a foresight slash. The idea here is we want to dodge back through an attack, hit the monster with the follow-up, and doing so will allow us to immediately go into that Spirit Round Slash, increasing our Spirit Blade level. On top of that, after any attack, we can hit right trigger and X to do special sheath. From here, we could hit triangle for EI slash, which will give us gradual gauge build up, which you can see. Or alternatively, if we time a right trigger attack, we will hit the EI spirit slash, which will increase our gauge. And on top of that, we'll be able to follow up with the spirit round slash combo out of that, potentially gaining 2 bars of gauge. So the biggest difference between these is obviously going straight into foresight slash is going to be a lot faster. You're meant to be able to do that mid-combat. It's kind of like a combo breaker. Whereas going into the EI stance is going to be a little bit harder to pull off because we got to get out on attack and then wait for the sheath animation, and now we can hit it. So you have to be a lot more prepared if you want to try and get that one off. Now, besides that, obviously in focus mode, we have unbound thrust, very similar to other weapons. The idea here is you're going to hit a weak point with that, and crazy animation is going to go down from there. We're going to be able to also get into round slashes and whatnot. But that kind of covers the base of the weapon. Now, the more important part of this weapon happens after we have it charged up. So we're going to go ahead, get things up to level 3. Now that the gauge is red, our options open up considerably. So hitting triangle, we now have the crimson slash. You can see it's much more aggressive compared to before. On top of that, our Spirit Blade combo also has an extension to it. So after Spirit Round Slash, we have Spinning Crimson Slash. And then on top of that, this is where you would want to utilize what's known as Helmbreaker. Now, with the Helmbreaker, after most attacks, and sometimes all on its own, you hit right trigger and triangle. That's going to do a Spirit Thrust. After that, you'll leap into the air, and then if you're going to whiff, hit square and you'll roll on out. Alternatively, you just aim it and come down, or hit right trigger to come down right where you're aiming. And if you hit the monster, you're going to do a ton of damage with something known as Helmbreaker. And then after that, if you hit right trigger a second time, you'll do a follow-up attack, which would allow you to expend 2 charges of your spirit gauge, but pump out a ton of damage. Now, another thing that's new to Wilds is the ability to just straight up charge and go into the Spirit Round Slash. So after a single attack, we can hold right trigger down. And it takes a while to get that charge off, but if you do it, you can see that's going to allow us to just immediately gain a level. Now, it's not going to go straight up to level 3. That's the equivalent of doing a Spirit Round Slash, but the idea is just it's higher commitment. So you're waiting and boom, that will get you a level all on its own. So very useful. Another thing that's going to change is when we are in the red gauge, our foresight slash will change to foresight whirl slash. Now this is going to function very similarly to Foresight Slash in the sense that when we hit it, it will function as a counter, and a successful hit will allow us to immediately go into a Spirit Round Slash. However, that's not going to immediately fill our gauge back up. So the main reason you would do that when you already have rated gauge is just, you know, you're busy fighting, you're going to get hit, you can't avoid something, you go into it same way you would with a Foresight Slash. We're using it as a counterattack. Now, once our gauge gets to red, eventually it's going to fall down. It's just how things work. It's going to fill out. And so that is where the Helmbreaker really comes in. Because the idea here is going to be, we're going to get into red gauge. We're going to be utilizing all these new attacks. Crimson Slashes. We're going to be utilizing the new Spirit Blade combo with the extension of going into the Spirit Round Slash. But eventually you're going to want to thrust. And then after that thrust, you're going to want to hit the Helmbreaker. Now, whether you follow up on the Helmbreaker and you do the extended attack, that's really going to depend on how close you are to the monster. It is very, very strong, but obviously keep in mind that range is important in this particular case. But otherwise, that's basically it. The general idea here is to just expend your gauge. We want to build up our gauge, get it up to red, and then we're going to pump damage from there. So I'm going to go ahead, drop this quest, pick it back up. I figured, I was like, you know, I'll just pick it up and I'll go explain stuff, but I don't think it makes a lot of sense to start the quest with my gauge already maxed, because we'll just be, you know, wouldn't be a good representation of how this is actually going to go down. In terms of the usefulness of counters, the biggest thing to remember is that your Foresight Slash, that's going to be your general go-to most of the time. If you have the time to get off an EI Spirit Slash, you're getting huge value out of it, but it's much higher commitment. So just keep that in mind. Alright, let's pick this up. Nice and fresh. We'll be able to jump on them right at the same spot as we did with the other weapons. And same as before, we'll be doing a play-by-play kind of what I'm trying to hit. I will say, in terms of experience, I do not have as much experience with Longsword. It's funny, as I almost did a full playthrough with Longsword, and then I like slowly got sucked into other weapons. Was like, oh, this insect glaive looks good. Oh, this light bowgun looks good. And so I like started playing less and less and less of it. But it's, I mean, I still know what I'm doing with it, but I don't think I am as good at the counters as I should be with Longsword. And it's definitely a weapon where the more time you commit to it, the more rewarding it'll be. But either way, let's jump in. Another thing to keep in mind, if you are playing Toggle, which we are, after your combo, you're going to be resheathing your weapon, so keep that in mind. Toggle is going to be going off quite a bit. So right now, I like going for EI Slash a lot, but just to show foresight. You can see, get that counterattack, immediately get the gauge full. I'm already red, so just to show things off, I'm going to get the hit the Helmbreaker. I jump up, aim, since I'm right on top of him. I'm going to do the follow-up attack. We made a wound, so I'm going to go ahead and hit that wound. It's going to gain us a level off of that stagger. I'm going to go ahead and gain another level. Jump up in the air again. Ooh, big hit there. Gonna hit the weak point, jump up. Don't know what he's waiting for. Just gonna pump some damage. And whether you want to go for the Helm Slash immediately or not, it's really just going to be up to your playstyle. Usually I'm going to try and build out some damage, and then right when my gauge gets to around half, that's usually going to be where I will go for it. But sometimes if I know something is getting ready to run, like this thing is, may just pump the damage out immediately, because I know that pretty soon this thing is going to be getting away and I'm not going to have a lot of time to execute it further. So since it's trying to run, we're just going all in on the damage right now. Right there. I should have done a Fade Slash, but I didn't. Ah, come on. Oh, I'm not going to get enough. I was trying to kill it outright before it could have a chance to get away, but thing is already in its death throes. I thought the couple Helmbreakers hit it there would have been enough to finish it off. Let's sort of recap. Spirit Round Slashes, get our levels on up. Wonder, go to sleep, buddy. He was so close to dead. Almost killed him before he got to him. But like I said, longsword, it pumps insane damage once you get going with it. It does probably some of the highest damage you're going to get out of a weapon. But the big things are just making sure you hit those foresight slashes to build up. And then if you have the timing and you have the opportunity, go ahead and go for that EI Spirit Slash to get that 1-2 double gauge build up real fast. Keep in mind you need to hit that attack and then you're doing a second Spirit Round Slash. But that's what makes it so valuable, because usually the EI Spirit Slash is going to get that little bit of stagger, allowing you to get a second one in, which is really nice because going up 2 levels off of a counter is pretty clutch. And obvious, using our weak points, getting those to open the monster up, giving us an easy opportunity. And then one thing which I really struggle with a lot with longsword is making sure use your Fade Slash to go straight into Spirit Step Slash in level 3. It's always going to be much faster, and it's one of the things I'm really bad about, because I get into the loop of, you know, hit my Helmbreaker and do my thing, that I end up spamming the full Spirit attack a lot, which is something that I know I can improve with. But either way, that is going to be it for longsword. Like I said, it's a pretty easy weapon to pick up and learn. The harder part is just getting down your counter timings and kind of perfecting your flow. You know, like I was talking about, using that lateral Fade Slash, getting used to working that in constantly and not just spamming the button. But it does do a lot of damage, and I mentioned it, but I didn't do it there. When you go up for the Helmbreaker, if it looks like the monster is running or you're going to whiff, hit square, and then that way you don't actually expend a charge and you maintain red, which is huge. So either way, we're going to wrap things up here. I think up next will probably be Greatsword, but that'll be a little bit later. So thanks for watching, and I'll catch y'all soon with more.